what you focus on. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Lady K Chat podcast. You are here with your favorite host, Lady K, and I would like to welcome you. For those who do not know me, I am the one that speaks that fire truth. I do it with love because I do not have to hold my tongue back, and I have so much to say, and I know you guys want to listen in. So everybody guys already know for the whole month of September and going into October, I am talking about what men want. It is imperative to give them a space, so they can talk about what's on their mind, because men got feelings too. But this gentleman that I have here today, I would like everyone to help me welcome Mr. John Carter. He is the CEO of Third JC Enterprises. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Appreciate you for having me, sis. It's we took a while for us to get it together, but I'm glad that we actually had a chance to do it.
Absolutely. You are finally here. Let me say something. Timing is everything, and this is the perfect timing. We are here in this space, in this bubble, and I'm so excited, John. So I had a few gentlemen on my show, right? And one was married, one was single, and I think other one's single, right? But you're in a special place, John. You're actually at that engagement space. And I love that, right? Because I want to talk today from the perspective of, how do a man get to that place of deciding what woman to propose? So I think that is so important, especially with a man who has great intentions in mind. Let's start there. His intentions are clear. He knows what he's want, and he knows he's about to lead a family soon. So, John, my question to you is, right, what qualities about your fiance attracted you to her?
Well, I think one of the things that really resonated with me the most is her spirituality, and that's really interesting to me because I'm a man of faith and I'm Christian, and I've actually been part of a church, part of a ministry for as long as I can remember. As long as I can pronounce the word church, I've been in church. That's just the nature of my family, my rearing. However, I've not been historically. I haven't been really taking that part of my relationship with women seriously. Whereas, and I think a lot of times when you're younger and you out here in these streets, you're not looking at that part of your connection with that woman, mainly because that will require that some things you do and some things you do not do as it relates to your relationship with her. I mean, just keeping it 100 with you. If you in these streets and you doing stuff you ain't got nothing to doing, I mean, you're not looking for a woman with some spiritual convictions and actually trying to live her life out for the Lord, or even trying to. And for me, I think the other part of it is for she and we were actually establishing a relationship remotely and ironically enough in the middle of the pandemic. So there was a lot of times where we really got together and we were doing a lot of talking. We were doing a lot of praying. We were doing a lot of actually interacting with one another on a personal level. So there was no veneers, there was no curtains. We ain't had nothing else but she and I, who we really are. So we couldn't really hide from one another because all we had is that conversation. So we really got a chance to see who we were working with from the start. And one of the things that she was looking for, and one of the things that I found so much more important in her, came from her relationship with God. So, and obviously, me being me, just again, being honest and transparent with you, it helps that she's also very, very easy on the eyes. So that's wonderful. But but for me in this season of my life, I think a lot of the things that resonate with me the most with her has a lot to do with her spirit, not just her spirituality, but she's just a genuinely wonderful human being.
Mm.
And that's not as much of a commodity as one might think. It does those don't grow on trees like you would think they should.
I understand. You know what, John, you said a mouthful, but one thing that resonated with me, you said, in this season that I'm in. I love that part because we all go through different phases in our life, like we're the things that we experience, right? And sometimes those experiences help cultivate the seasons to come and where you're at right now, right? So prior to meeting her, right, what would you say something in your past that helped you to be the man that you are today?
Um, Challenge, adversity, actually. I think that I've always been that individual that I'm going into challenges not like gangbusters. Okay, we gonna fight it out. We gonna work it out. We gonna fight this thing out. I've never been that type of dude. I've been like, okay, if we're going to if we find ourselves in this situation, a lot of times I go into it kicking and screaming, but I come out of it looking at things a lot more objectively. And I think that everything leading up to this point has made me a lot more critical of what I want, how I move, and why I move. Doesn't mean I'm necessarily doing things perfectly, but for someone who lives in his head, a lot of times it's allowed me to be a lot more critical of those of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And when you get into that situation where you're a lot more critically saying, okay, why am I doing what I'm doing? If it doesn't make sense, it's something like I tell my baby boy all the time. It's like if you're doing something that you can't justify why you're doing it, why do it?
Mm.
And so a lot of times I think the things that have actually resonated and actually carved out who I am becoming have a lot to do with the bumps and bruises, the touching the hot stove, the stuff that just didn't go well, and I'm processing it a little bit more critically now. And so when I see things that come up similar to that, I'm a lot less quick to run headlong into the same old situation again. So I'm gonna fall back a little bit more, and requires I do. It requires I be a little bit more patient in a lot of instances because I'm not an impulsive dude, but I'm finding I have to be even more patient than I was having trouble with before. So,
Right.
so I'm spending a lot more time thinking it out. So when situations require I have to sit on ice a little bit, I spend that time while I'm sitting on ice thinking about it and making sure that this is the move I'm going to make. And if I'm going to make it, I'm gonna go all in. And if I'm not going to make it, or I'm feeling all apprehensive about it, I just kind of fall back a little bit. And ironically enough, when God wants you where you wants you in a certain spot, and you sit still long enough, things work out whether you put your hands on them or not.
I like what you said, John. You really said a lot that put a lot of men in a position to make them think about their actions prior. That's part of the process of growing up, would you say?
Yeah, yeah. I it's a challenging thing more so for me because I'm always thinking, but
Mm.
I think that there's a difference between being always thinking and thinking about the right thing. And I'm actually spending a lot more time think, thinking about the right thing. The growing up part was helped along when I became a dad because even when I don't want that to happen, I'm finding that I'm being watched all the time. And
Mm.
say something, a lot of times I'm holding myself to accountable, and putting my feet to the fire. Because there are things I tell my boys, my guys actually. My oldest is a grown man, but my baby boy is a teenager. So when I'm having these conversations with them, I can hear myself holding them accountable, but at the same time, in the back part of my mind, questioning whether or not I'm I'm moving parallel with what I'm telling them. And if I do, I change. If I'm not, I'm changing the conversation up so that I let them know that, look, if I'm telling them something they need to do, and I'm not perfectly role modeling that, I mention that. Like I'm like, for instance, if I'm telling them, look, you got to be forthright, you got to be honest with me and straight up with me, and I know I'm not doing that. And this, I will inject that into the conversation, just giving them an opportunity to glimpse into the fact that, yeah, I need you to do this, but keep in mind, Dad ain't 100% on this yet. I'm still working on this, but I'm telling you that because I know what I speak. I don't necessarily have to be perfect, and I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm telling you this because I know from experience that this is what I need. This is what needs to be happening
Right.
because you're going through things that I'm on the back end of. So when I'm telling you this, I'm actually holding myself accountable for that.
I like that you said that. I like how you said you're actually holding yourself accountable. I think it's imperative because you are a raising boy. Well, you said one is older, but you still are that figure that they're going to be looking up to. I don't care what age you are. Sometimes
Mhm.
you never realize your kids are looking at you and they're seeing what you're doing and how you move. And if it's something that they like, they're going to emulate it. Like you said, they watch you like hawks. They watch you 24/7. But the thing about being a parent
Yeah.
is they're going to see you when you fall. They're going to see you when you correct yourself. And then, also too, like you said, they might question the integrity. But once they see that your intentions are pure and that, we are all human and we fall short, I think that was a great space for you to allow your son, to to come seek you, right? That's one, right?
Mhm.
And also too, to let him know that dad is not perfect. That gotta be kind of like hard though, because it's like you got this many person watching you 24/7, trying to be a human being. It's like, how do you have that balance? How do you give yourself grace?
Um, one of the things that I one of the things that came up. It's interesting that that came up. Is it's two things actually. The first thing is I am cognizant of the fact that you don't know what your child will actually take with them. So you try and give them everything that you know that you should be giving them, hoping that the right things will resonate because you can't see into your crystal ball into the future as to what they're going to bring with them. So you try as much as possible to give them the important things that you know you should be sharing. And just slight segue, um, I use the analogy of my dad. My dad is, let's say, to say the least, he was a complicated character, but I love him. I loved him with all my heart. And when he passed on, I find a lot of times one of the most pivotal moments that I remember with him is I couldn't have been no more than maybe 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 years old, something like that. I remember wrestling with him, me and my brothers, my younger brothers, wrestling with him in the front yard of the house we grew up in. Out of all the things that I remember, that resonates with me more than anything else.
Hmm.
And I'm approaching 51, and I remember that of all these other things. And what that told me is that you can't really be sure what they're going to take. So it's to your advantage and it's your calling to make sure that you give them as much of what you know you need to give them. You can't necessarily guarantee what they're going to take and resonate with what's going to resonate with them, but you still have to give them everything that they're supposed to receive from you
Absolutely.
and pray that it's going to the right thing stay with them. And for me, I don't know if that's the right thing that stayed with me, but it's one of those more pivotal moments that keeps my heart warmed about who my dad was. But that stayed with me, so I'm assuming that it was the right thing. But
You
yeah,
know what? I want to say this. First of all, you said you're almost 51. I want to say, John, you look fabulous, and blacks don't crack, okay? Your skin is beautiful. You know, men need to be told that, like, hey, like, you look fabulous, you look great, because, you know, a lot of women get the compliment, but I think men need that too. How do you feel about, you know, receiving compliments? Are you open to it, or sometimes does it feel foreign to you when people tell you?
a little of both, actually. I mean, it's a guy. It is. Well, I can't speak for other guys. I think it's a guy thing. Put the air quotes up. I think it's a guy thing. But for me, on a personal level, I like it to a degree because I also know that everyone that compliments you is not complimentary for the right reasons, for the
The
right intent.
intentions.
And then the other part about it is I like it to a certain degree. If I get a little bit of it here and there, yeah, it make me feel good, pop my collar, just walk around feeling good all day. To a certain degree, that makes me feel good. If I consistently hear it packed all the time, then I'm going to wonder if you're disingenuous. And then I'm also going to wonder what your agenda is by doing this, like you being like I'm being buttered up for the okie doke.
Mm.
And I don't know if that's a guy thing. I don't know if that's just a person thing, but that's definitely a job thing. So it's that's how I move. It's like to a certain degree when I'm getting that, I'm feeling good. It's nice to sprinkle it. It's like seasoning.
Right, right,
Like
right,
seasoning in your food. You sprinkle a little bit. You don't overpower it with that. You sprinkle it a little bit and add some flavor to it. That adds some flavor to my day. But you keep piling it up on me, and I'm like, okay, what's your agenda? What's your angle? Why is you telling me all this? It's like
right.
because I don't compliment myself that much, and I love me.
That's a good. Like, listen. You said a key point. I'm gonna come back to that. You said I love me, but I do agree with you. Intentions are very important because you want to know what is that person. What is the big deal behind that? You know, and I understand. So you're curious, but at the same time too, you know, accept it because you know you guys deserve it. You know, you guys are phenomenal.
Thank you.
You're great. And you know, we see us women, we see what you are doing. So, with this next question, how important it is for you, for your woman to speak like him to you.
I think it's crucial. It's very important. It's one of the things that Renee does very well. I mean, I have to balance it out because we were just talking about complimenting and how a lot of times you can feel that there is some type of agenda if you hear too much, and she is very deliberate and very intentional about making sure that I know my value and how much she appreciates me. And sometimes I kind of shrug it off, and I'm like, well, you know, thank you. This is what I'm supposed to do, but I appreciate that, and she's doing it because that's who she is, and I understand it work. I'm working against that mindset that I was just alluding to a few minutes ago
Right.
when I speak to her because I know her intentions are genuine when she does that. But then at the also, oh no, on the other end of things, I'm not. I only want that sprinkle because that is what I'm comfortable with, and anything more than that, I'm gonna be feeling. I'm gonna be feeling some kind of way about hearing it.
Mm.
And then the other part of that is I have a very old school. Uh, I grew up with a lot of male figures in my life, so I have a very old school way of seeing things in some respects that comes from the men in my world. So I think we get into this mindset where we like to labor under this misnomer that this is what is expected of us, and we shouldn't be looking for kudos and commendations for doing what
Mm,
you're supposed to do. And the downside to that is, on the plus side, yeah, there are some things that are your responsibility as the man, and you are supposed to do that. The downside to that is that you don't allow yourself to accept um, compliments and be valued appropriately, and then you shrug it off. And then in some cases, you did when you feel unappreciated, you can't reflect, you can't accept the fact that once these same people was just pouring into you before, you was kind of bucking away from them
right.
because you've been programmed to believe that, look, you're not supposed to look for that validation. At the end of the day, you still human. I
I'm
mean,
happy you said that because I believe what you're speaking on, a lot of men feel that way and they're trying to find this balance, right? So it's like it's good to have some of the old ways that you, like you said, a man is supposed to do these things, but it's also great to incorporate when you have that support system and you know that they have your back to be comfortable enough that you can confide in them if something was wrong or if they needed to speak life into you, they would do that. So I understand there's that balance that you guys struggle with. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that. When you said that, the first thing I started thinking about is instances. The word vulnerability came into play. I thought about how sometimes you have
Right.
conversations, you have moments where you have to be transparent and you wrestle with it because again this is a mindset that you for many years in your formative years you weren't even encouraged to think was appropriate for you to do, and
Right.
then you get into this situation with this other human being that's expecting you to be that way with them, and it's an uphill battle to get to that point because when you're younger you told this what men do, this what man up, this what men do, this is what men are not supposed to do, and now you're in a fully functioning, preferably a fully functioning relationship where you have to actually be honest, be forthright, be transparent, and dare I say it, be vulnerable with someone, and you're wrestling with that a lot. It's an uphill battle all the time because you're literally fighting that those particular mindsets all the time with that
Right.
person. And I know for me, I I'm having those conversations on a regular basis now because the only way that I'm gonna have anything genuine, I guess your cat wants to be in
Yeah, she's always trying to be in the mix. She was trying to be in the other show. I'm like, Cleo, you
That's
see her,
wild.
right? Just making herself comfortable. I'm like, but
I
she's my boo thing though, but I
say
love her.
story
But
yeah.
John, you did say a mouthful. You said a lot, but I want to go back to one particular thing you said, right? And I
Mhm.
want to kind of think about it, including your sons, because I feel this is important. Because, like you said, you were raised around a lot of men, right? And now you're trying to teach your sons how to be men, right? Honorable men, right? Have you ever had that conversation with your son about it's okay to cry or it's okay to be in your feelings? Like, what are those conversations look like with your youngest son?
Um, I've I remember very vividly when you said that. I remember very vividly saying, I don't remember the instance, but I remember the words that I said to him. It was something he was getting real melodramatic about. And I looked at him and I told him, because when I said it, and I'm just painting the picture, when I said it to him, I was thinking about my experiences. And what I said to him is like, look, if you don't hear nothing else about crying, and I'm paraphrasing at this point, I say, if you don't hear anything
Right.
else about crying, as a young man, remember that your dad told you this. There are moments where you are going to have to you cry and get that out, But this one is not one of them. And it was one of those things where I made the distinction. Look, it's going to have its place, but that situation we was in, this ain't it. You said you basically you doing too much. You being real extra right now. And
Mm,
that's what I was saying. It's like there was a difference. It's like not to say that there's not a reason.
right,
There are, but this one wasn't it. Because I tell you, I'm a fully functioning, very responsible man, but I'm a mama's boy. I adore my mother. And when God calls her, I'm going to cry because that's what she means to me.
right,
If I stumble over the words on this interview, and all of a sudden I'm not presenting myself a certain way, this is not a moment to be crying.
right. I understand.
I lose someone that's near and dear to me, or if I'm in mortal pain in the hospital on the most painful thing imaginable going on, those are moments when you might get a little tearful. But something like this, like my story, it's like I'm gonna look a certain way to the internet or something like that, and I'm getting melodramatic and teary eyed. That's not a moment. And what I was trying to explain to him is like, look, I don't want you to be I don't want you to be a stereotype of what a man is, because I'm not a stereotypical dude, but there are layers to me, and I want there to be layers to him. And
Mm,
there are things you gonna get emotional about, but that ain't it. And I think the worst thing I can do is have my child in a stage where he trying to figure out who he is, and then try and tell him who he is, say who, just try and tell him who he ain't.
right,
You know, I guess what I'm saying in this instance is that I I gotta make sure that I give him opportunity to become a fully functioning man by giving him both what I know to be a man is and what I have learned a man is. Because there are some things that I'm learning right now at 50 that I didn't know when I became 21. You know,
right,
you were talking about that, well, we were talking about that earlier, about how these things happen through the bumps and bruises, and you start learning those things, and now you have to share stuff with him that you couldn't have shared had he come into your world uh, 14 years earlier than he did.
mm,
And I I know that I would have still been the best dad that I know to be. But there's some things that I wouldn't be able to share with him if he came along any earlier, because I didn't have the vantage point. And some of that vantage point came from touching that hot stove and bumping bruises and just making incredibly dumb decisions.
right. I can definitely relate on that level because I had my son at an early age, so there was a lot of bumps and bruises that I had to go through. He's seen it, and I actually said to my son before too. I said, if you was at this age, right, and you became a parent, I said, do you think you would know what to do? He said, no, mom. I said, exactly. I said, so give your mom grace for those years I didn't know. I said, but right now, our relationship is looks so much better than what it used to be, and I'm grateful. But also too, he's so humble and he's so sweet, and I appreciate him working with me as I'm working with him, and that's what we're supposed to do as parents. We're supposed to work with one another. So many times I hear one-sided things, so I appreciate the fact how you elaborate on certain things, like telling your son this is the time and place for certain things. That's very important. You know what I'm trying to say? So I appreciate you elaborating on that. But I want to go back to something you said
I
earlier
was
before we leave.
Before you do that, I was just saying, it's something that popped up on me. It's like we don't even. I think it's the blessing that God has with His timing, because we don't even. Some of the time, we don't have our kids any sooner than we did because we weren't even positioned enough to appreciate the honor of being their parents. I mean, we're
Mm,
basically stewarding we're basically just stewarding the growth, and I say steward because God lent them to us basically. But
Absolutely.
we're basically stewarding the growth and development and maturation of another human being. And some of us, a lot of us, aren't even ready to appreciate the honor of having them and being responsible for them until they come along, even if we didn't feel like we were ready. I mean,
Right.
it's interestingly enough, when I held my son the first time, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was very cognizant of the fact that everything changed. My world changed from this little bundle that I was holding. Everything changed from that moment on. And honestly enough, I've been working in the nonprofit sector in the on my 9 to 5. I've been working in the not with youth, other people's kids, basically, for much of my experience. Just as much as I've done with my graphic design, I have worked just as much of that time with in the nonprofit sector with other people's kids. And ironically enough, that has colored my experience very vividly as it
Mm,
relates to youth. So there was a time where I didn't even know if I would appreciate being a parent because I had been around all these not yet acting kids.
right.
Even though I was I was blessed enough to create a positive impact, I didn't think that I would appreciate the concept. But when my child came along, I had mellowed considerably. Again, those twists and turns that life bring you in, it got to the point where you start looking at things differently. And that was the point where I was able to honor being somebody's dad because I
Mm,
wasn't the same cat that I was before he arrived.
right. I appreciate that because a lot of people they have kids, but they're not parenting their kids. And there's a big difference. I think we need to come back and do a whole show topic on that because it's so crazy. I see so many parents like they're in this complaining space. But when I step back and I say to them, like, listen, um, how much time do you actually spend with your child undivided? Children want your undivided attention. And a lot of times, like you said something earlier, you'd be in our head. We are so much in our head that we don't give our undivided attention and they can feel it. My girlfriend said something so imperative one time, and I said, that is so true. She said, I'm I'm physically here in the home, but I'm not present. So you think because you're in the home, your kids see you. Yeah, they see you. They can see you all day and not get an inch of your undivided attention. And I have to say this as a mom, my youngest, he definitely taught me like a whole nother perspective, a whole other vibe to do so because I realized as a parent, you think about so many things, so much stuff is on your head, but you forget to give those moments to them, and that's imperative.
It's
So
so
I'm
many,
happy you brought that up.
yeah. It is so many pieces to that, and just being transparent again. I am not in the home because my son lives with his mother,
That's
but
fine.
he sees me he communicates with me every day, and it's one of those things where I'm learning a lot through him because even when he's not verbally telling me about it, I I'm very cognizant of the fact that he's holding me accountable about certain things. Like if we're having a conversation and he's sharing with something to me, and real talk, he's sharing something to me that I quite frankly, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it matters to him. But if
Right.
talking and I'm not engaged, he'll speak to me again, Dad. And that's all he's saying. But
Right.
that was my clue. That was my context clue that look, you ain't listening. This is important to me, and I'm trying to talk to you." And he like, "Dad," and I'm over here zoning out on the day, the cares of the day, and he like, "Dad," and I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, what's up?" And then we just go back into it, and that was my clue. Then look, bro, you tighten up. I'm trying to talk to you about something that's important to me. So and he's teaching me that as well on a regular basis.
That
Um,
is so true because
yeah,
I'm going through the same experience as a parent. But again, I'm just happy we touched base on this. And I think that's a further conversation because there's so many layers to parenting. We already know it's not easy. But like you said in the beginning, one of the memories that you had was your dad when he was 10 years old. That's going to happen with them. They're going to remember those little moments that they have with us. And they're just going to take that and they're going to carry that with them, you know? But before John, before we leave, I do want to go back to something that you said earlier, and then we're going to close out because we're running out of time. In the beginning, you said, "I love me. I love myself."
right.
What did it take for you to get to that space?
Uh, um, I think I think that's a process
Mm,
because I am I say sometimes there are instances where I say that to remind myself because there are instances where I love myself, but I don't necessarily like myself all that much. And I think that there are very much two different things. And
right.
there are instances where I would say that to remind myself of my worth. And it's one of those things that comes into play that, and here's a glimpse, another glimpse back into the male side of thinking. It's many times when you miss the mark of what you think you should be doing as a man in the world of the people that you are responsible for, your worth and your value can be unnecessarily tied up in the things that you did not do or you did not accomplish or you still have yet to have accomplished. So many times you don't always feel that warm and fuzzy that you're supposed to about yourself, who you are, and what you bring to the table. So sometimes you have to verbalize it. You know, there are ladies that got the anthems and the anthems. They got their it's the vocalists that are singing the songs to validate the ladies and remind them of their worth. And sometimes that's a subtle reminder for me that regardless of what is yet undone or what I dropped the ball on, that I still am of value. You know,
Mm,
getting to that point came is coming from, just understanding that at the end of the day, no matter whatever else happens, I'm the only person that I'm going to be with until my eyes close that last time. And at some point, I'm going to have to enjoy that person. And even if it's a slow, arduous process, it is one that's going to happen. I mean, anything that you mess up on, most things you really, really, really mess up, you didn't mess up instantly. You messed up over time. So I've messed up how I look at myself over time. So the process to looking at myself differently is going to take some time as well.
right.
So part of it is going to come from just saying those words of affirmation for myself. You know, you get a couple of guys that might look at this and they might be looking at it a little differently because they expect because your ego will make you
Mm,
say that no, you're supposed to act this way or certain or this is the wrong message to be saying. But this ain't maybe that message is not for you. I'm speaking for John. I'm not speaking for Raheem. I'm not speaking for Larry. I'm not speaking for Willie or whoever else. I'm speaking for John. And
right.
John's journey ain't your journey. So, it's okay if that's not your cup of tea. That's my coffee.
Absolutely. I like how you said that, John, that That resonated a lot with me, and I really appreciate your words of wisdom that you shared here today. So I'm pretty sure the people are inquiring if they wanted to reach you, where can they go to follow you?
If you are following me from, well, personally, it's just, well, I'm going to direct them to business. This is about business. Um, I am the CEO and president of Third JC Enterprises, which is a graphic design and creative marketing agency. If you wanted to learn more information about them or us, you'd be looking at the number 3 RDJC Enterprises. Uh, thirdjcenterprises.com is the website. You would be able to reach me across all of my social media outlets. Um, as for my personal social media, if you find me, you can hang out and you can connect that way. But I'm not giving that out. Because if you're talking to me about social media, we talking about Third JC Enterprises. I had enough people connected to my social media, and the idea is to purge the ones that aren't that prune the leaves that ain't serving any value.
I hear that. I thank you, John. I appreciate you. No, I really do. I enjoy this conversation. I think it's needed. I think a lot of brothers may feel the way you may feel. And again, I'm just happy that we was able to create this space and this place for them just to hear what you have to say and just hear perspective. So with that being said, everyone, I thank you for listening. And if this resonates with you, I'm pretty sure it can resonate with someone else. So please remind yourself to like, to comment, and definitely share this with your brothers and sisters. You already know you can find us here at the Lady K Chat Podcast, here on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and also too, one more thing. Don't forget to hit the notification buttons. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys and just following us. I appreciate you, John. I appreciate the audience. So we're going to see you next week here again at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Y'all have a good night, and thank you, John.
You're welcome. Thank you, sis.
Lady K.